here are the top stories of the news. FAN clears boat to resume operations at airports, denies fixing taxi fares. Police demand evidence from VeryDarkMan over alleged officers' collusion with kidnappers. On the foreign scene, 1,500 people, including foreigners, missing across Nepal and China's Tibet after deadly flash floods. Good afternoon and welcome to Spring News at 12 on Western Spring Television. I am Timitope Ajijolaoluwa Ola. The Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria, FAN, has cleared ride-hailing platform boats to resume operations at its airports immediately after the two sides reached an operational agreement following a dispute that disrupted the service. FAN's Director, Public Affairs and Consumer Protection, Henry Agbebire, in a statement this morning said the dispute stemmed from nearly a decade of efforts to address safety, security, and accountability concerns around commercial and e-hailing vehicles operating at its airports. The authority also dismissed claims that it was in control of fares, saying fares has always existed independently. The authority apologized for the difficulties the disruption may have posed for passengers, adding that it had listened, reflected, and made the necessary adjustments. FAN noted that the concerns had prompted it to introduce the airport car hire management system, which it reiterated was not an e-hailing app and does not compete with Bolt, Uber, or other mobility platforms. The authority also addressed public criticism over airport taxi fares, saying rates cited in recent public discussion were not newly imposed by FAN and were not substantially different from fares that existed previously. And now to politics. The presidential candidate of the Allied People's Movement and governor of Oyo State, Seyi Makinde, has appointed Anthony Ehilabo as a special advisor on media and digital communication. The appointment, according to Makinde's special advisor on media, Sulaiman Olanrewaju and Ibadan, the state capital, takes immediate effect, with further campaign team announcements to follow. The governor in the statement released this morning said Ehilabo's expertise as a communication strategist and lawyer would be a powerful asset in driving the APM's message of resetting Nigeria and securing victory in the 2027 presidential election. He further urged Nigerians to stand firmly and rally behind the party, emphasizing that the 2027 election was a historic opportunity to rescue the country from what he described as the failed leadership of the All Progressives Congress. With the 2027 general election drawing closer, the controversial issue of fuel subsidy removal has again taken center stage as leading presidential contenders adopt sharply different positions on whether the policy should be sustained or reversed. While President Bola Tinubu insists the subsidy regime has gone, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar as promising to reinstate it if elected, while former Anambra State Governor Peter Obi maintains that Nigeria should retain the policy that properly invests the savings in critical sectors. Precious Amos has the details.
Fuel subsidies in Nigeria were introduced in the 1970s as a response to the oil price shock of 1973. The formalization of these subsidies occurred with the enactment of the Price Control Act in 1977, which aimed to keep petrol prices low for consumers. However, in May 2023, President Bola Tinubu removed the fuel subsidy, a firm decision that has had profound economic implications.
On fuel subsidy, unfortunately, the budget that I've glimpsed before I assumed office and what I've heard is that no provision is there for fuel subsidy. The fuel subsidy is gone.
The removal of fuel subsidy was in the bid for a broader strategy to address unsustainable fiscal deficits and channel funds towards other critical areas. However, this brought in a crisis that inflated living conditions of citizens across the country. Meanwhile, ahead of the 2027 general election, the leading political candidates from the All Progressives Congress, Bola Tinubu, the Nigeria Democratic Congress, Peter Obi, and the African Democratic Congress, Atiku Abubakar, have taken a position on the removal or reinstating of fuel subsidy. Recently, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar promised to bring back fuel subsidy as part of his reforms if he emerges as Nigeria's president in the 2027 election. According to him, his proposed policy is aimed at restoring the purchasing power of Nigerians, arguing that the strength of an economy should be measured by what citizens can afford rather than how much revenue the government collects.
So many Nigerians have been calling me to say that, one of my press aides had contradicted me in my policy statement as far as subsidy is concerned. I want to repeat categorically that what I said, I will return subsidy, I will. And Nigeria is rich enough to look after the welfare of its citizens. Therefore, let it be clearly stated that he was not speaking on my own authority, because the removal of subsidy has driven more Nigerians into poverty than at any other time in the history of this country. And the fundamental responsibility of the government is the welfare of the citizens.
Former Anambra State Governor Peter Obi, on the other hand, supports and advocates for the removal of fuel subsidy. He believes that the policy is necessary for the country's economic health, stating that the decision to remove the subsidy should not be reversed due to the mismanagement of the funds generated from it. However, Obi stresses the importance of properly managing the funds saved from the subsidy removal, claiming that the government has not effectively utilized the resources, which he estimates to be around 16 trillion naira. Instead of returning to the subsidy regime, he insists that these funds should be invested in critical sectors such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure to improve the lives of Nigerians.
I subscribe and I maintain that you need to remove subsidy. Mismanagement of the proceeds should not be the reason for not removing it. What we should have done is that when we remove subsidy, we would have given the people alternative usage for the subsidy. What we have today is that removal and the attendant resources being recovered is also being mismanaged and stolen. For example, we have received, according to them, 16 trillion. We will, I said it before, go to my manifesto and say I will remove subsidy. We'll do it in an organized manner. And whatever we recover will be invested appropriately. And I just give you an example because we have no time. Let's say you remove subsidy and you decided number one thing a nation needs to develop is health. And today our health is very poor Our primary health care is very poor, where we are now have more maternal and child issues than countries like India.
In 2012, years before he became Nigeria's leader, President Bola Tinubu strongly opposed the removal of the fuel subsidy by President Goodluck Jonathan, calling it a Jonathan tax that broke the government's social contracts with the people. However, he has continued to defend his May 29, 2023 declaration. Subsidy is gone, and his administration insists it will remain removed to protect public finances. Also, the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, cautioned against calls to restore the petrol subsidy, saying a return to the old regime would undermine Nigeria's improving fiscal position, weaken investor confidence, and reverse gains from the economic reforms of the President Tinubu administration. Citing the federal government's recently presented Nigeria's reform scorecard, the benefits, costs, and harms prevented. Idris said the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Taiwo Oyedele, disclosed that subsidy savings mobilized 15.8 trillion naira in resources for the Federation between June 2023 and December 2025. Meanwhile, President Tinubu has described Atiku's proposal to restore petrol subsidy if elected president in 2027 as evidence of serious ignorance on governance and economy.
I saw one of my opponents now say he will go back to subsidy. I read it. That is demonstration of a serious ignorance on governance and economy. Before I came here, 27 states are unable to pay salaries. Not to even talk of pensioners, salary of workers.
The impacts of fuel subsidy removal disproportionately affects lower-income households. As fuel prices rise, these households face increased costs for transportation and goods, worsening their financial strain. According to a 2024 Afrobarometer survey, the reinstatement of fuel subsidies in Nigeria has gained wide support by citizens, with 58% of the populace saying the government should bring them back, even if it means cutting spending on health or education. However, successful reinstatement of subsidies may depend on the government's ability to manage public expectations and provide assurances regarding social protection and compensation measures, with a yearning for transparency in how the funds saved from the subsidy removal are redirected to support sustainable economic development. Precious Amos, Western Spring Television News.
And now to security matters. Troops of Sector 2 Operation Fasanyama has rescued a kidnapped woman and disrupted a planned ransom exchange in Danko Wasago local government area of Kebbi State. The operation's acting spokesperson, Lieutenant Colonel Olani Yoshoba, in a statement said the operation followed a credible intelligence on a planned ransom payment for the woman who was abducted from her farm last month. It disclosed that the troops swiftly mobilized to intercept the transaction, revealing that the terrorists attempted to engage the advancing troops from sighting them. According to him, the troops' superior firepower forced the criminals to retreat in disarray, leaving the hostage behind. It said the victim was found unharmed and had been safely transported to reunite with her family in Danko Wasago local government area. He added that the troops further conducted a thorough exploitation of the terrorists' withdrawal route to ensure that the area was fully secured before returning to base. In the meantime, the Nigeria police has challenged social media personality Martins Vincent Otse, popularly known as VeryDarkMan, VDM, to provide evidence to support his allegation that some police officers at checkpoints share information about travelers with kidnappers and bandits. The force made the demand in a statement signed by its public relations officer, CSP Ani Nedu, on Thursday, following remarks attributed to VDM at the ongoing Nigerian Bar Association conference in Port Harcourt. VDM had alleged that police officers manning checkpoints along major highways identify wealthy travelers and pass information about their identities and movements to kidnappers, thereby facilitating abductions from ransom. Reacting, the police said it considered the allegations serious but rejected it as unsubstantiated and damaging to an institution responsible for protecting millions of Nigerians. It stated that allegations of such magnitude require credible evidence, stressing that officers deployed to checkpoints and other locations across the country are mandated to prevent crime, detect criminal activity, and protect citizens. The force also pointed to the risks faced by its personnel, saying officers routinely confront the same criminal elements they are accused of colluding with. Elsewhere, a total of 67 Nigerian returnees from South Africa have arrived at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos State on Wednesday night. The returnees landed via South Africa Airways at exactly 8:45 p.m. on Wednesday and were received by several federal government agencies, including the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, and the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants, and Internally Displaced Persons. The Southwest coordinator of the agency, Alex Oturu, said the return of the batch due to xenophobic challenges in the Rainbow Nation was facilitated by good-spirited Nigerians who assisted with their flight tickets and other assistance. A total of 83 Nigerians returned from the xenophobic country last Thursday. You're watching Spring News at 12 on Western Spring Television.